Today we are going to talk about Nagmandala by Girish Karnad. Now first we'll talk about Karnad himself. He was born in Mathera near Mumbai in May 1938 and he grew up in Sirsi, that's in Karnataka. He died on 10th June 2019. He wrote his plays in Kannada and translated them himself into English. Girish Karnad was an Indian actor, film director, Kannada writer and an activist. His most popular books include three plays: Nagmandala, Hayavadana, Tughlaq and Yayati, The Dreams of Tipu Sultan and Bali, The Sacrifice, and Fire and the Rain. Now when we talk about Nagmandala is based on the two oral stories from Karnataka that the playwright Girish Karnad heard from his mentor, Professor A.K. Ramanujan. Now Nagmandala means snake circle. The theme of this particular play is it exposes the exploitation and incarceration of women that occurs through the institution of marriage. Myths display the fears of men in society. Society is inherently patriarchal and uses values and morals in order to control and restrict the actions of women. Looking at the characters, the main character in the whole of the play is Rani, who is the central character. Apanna, the meaning of Apanna translates to any man. So it could be anyone other than this character, is a symbol employed by Karnad to highlight the reality of most weddings that occur in India. It is to show how marriage is a patriarchal institution that has always been unfair to women. Then there is Naga, the snake, who takes the form of Apanna. Gurudava, an old and blind woman who offers Rani a mystical root which, if she feeds Apanna, will lead him to forget about his mistress and be completely devoted to her. Then there is Kapanna, the son of Kurudava, who goes away with a snake woman, Yakshini. If we look at the characters, first we take up the character of Rani herself. Rani symbolizes the simple Indian female who is married to a total stranger. She has her dreams for a happy married life but gets a rude shock when the husband turns out to be a male chauvinist who keeps her locked up. The parents of Rani, when they were arranging her marriage, had just two considerations. The young man was rich, his parents were both dead, and that was enough for them. The concepts of fidelity, purity, morality, loyalty have always been associated only with women, and that is since the dawn of patriarchy. Girish Karnad has given a blow to the traditional concept of chastity, which has been imposed only on women, by showing the change of Rani from a simple woman to a shrewd woman at the end who hides Naga and takes decisions. Now when Rani is accused by her husband of adultery, she is asked by the village courts to take a purity test. This reminds us of what had been done to Sita when Ram had accused her of the same thing. Now when she is asked to put her hand inside a snake pit, and the snake was supposed to bite her if she was not innocent, and if she was innocent, the snake would not bite her. She passes the test and the village declares her to be a goddess and absolutely pure, although the audience very well knows that this is not the truth. Now we take the other character, Apanna, who was the husband of Rani. He is a modern man who does not bother about social ethics and purity of marriage as an institution. He subverts the concept of domestic happiness. Why? Because he gets married to Rani, but then he spends the whole day and nights with his mistress. He behaves immorally and oppresses his wife unjustly. This fellow locks up his wife for the whole day and leaves her. And he tells her that I'll come back only for lunch. Has his lunch, does not talk to her normally, does not talk to her in a way in which you would treat another human being. He is an insensitive and insincere husband. He is a dominating person who flirts outside but separates his wife from social contacts. He keeps her locked up. He does not want her to mix with anyone in society. He gives Rani separation, loneliness, humiliation, pain and mental strain. Kapanna, Kurudava's son, feels that Apanna should have been born a wild beast or a reptile, but by some mistake he was born a human being. Obviously the behavior was such that everybody knew how mean he was being to his newlywed wife. He is a representative of a patriarchal culture where moral values are not associated with men. Morality is something which is expected only from women. We now talk about Naga. Now who is this Naga? He is a cobra and he lives in the courtyard of Rani. And it just happens that when Rani is given that mystical root, she is asked to prepare a curry of it and give it to her husband, and her husband will get attracted to her. But then when she does the cooking, she finds that the food becomes red and she gets terrified and she thinks something will happen to her husband. So she goes and pours the entire stuff into the snake pit, and there it was. Naga was there and he drinks up the whole thing and falls in love with Rani. Naga drinks the mystical root poured into his pit by Rani. He is a supernatural being who can change forms. So what does he do? He changes into the form of her husband, Aparna. He is dishonest because he takes the form of Aparna to have relations with Rani. He typifies the beloved husband Rani had always longed for. He is very nice to her at night, and he talks to her very caringly. He talks about her family, he talks about her parents. And Rani also is surprised that how the same husband can have two behaviors in the morning and in the night. In the morning he is so mean to her, so badly he talks, and in the night how can he be so nice and good to her? He protects her from harm on several occasions. There's a time when Rani is pregnant and her husband, the real one, Aparna, throws a stone at her tummy so that she will have a miscarriage. But then the snake comes and hisses at her husband and stops her. And there are several occasions on which he tries to protect her. He sacrifices himself for Rani's happiness in the end. And so in the end, when he finds that Aparna has become a good husband, all because of the pressure of the village which declares Rani to be a goddess, what does Naga do? He makes himself, because he was a supernatural being, he makes himself as thin as Rani's hair and he starts to live in her hair instead. So he sacrifices himself for her happiness. Now if we look at the poetic justice in the whole of the play, Rani's infidelity can be regarded as poetic justice or retribution to Aparna's licentious act. Aparna was licentious in the beginning because he had a mistress and he was not treating Rani well. The beloved and her lover are happy, but Aparna's anguished state remains unchanged. He falls at her feet and begs her pardon. At the end, what happens? Naga and Rani are happy together. But Aparna's condition is terrible. He has to fall down at her feet, beg her pardon. He becomes her devoted husband and his concubine feels happy to serve Rani. So, his mistress becomes a servant of Rani. Thus, the persecutor becomes a rescuer and finally a miserable victim. He has no choice. Aparna has no choice in the end. Why? Because the whole village says that Rani is a goddess. She is absolutely pure. And although Rani herself also knows very well that her child is not born of her relations with Aparna, still she lets things be the way they are because she also had been greatly mistreated by her husband Aparna. Aparna accepts Rani's and Naga's child. It is even more torturous for him to allow her son to perform the ritual to commemorate the death of the surrogate father each year. Rani said that the son will perform certain rites to remember the death of Naga every year, and Aparna cannot object. All his patriarchal authority is paralyzed at the end. At the end, he just remains her servant, obedient husband. A person who had once accused his wife of being a harlot, a whore, a slut, now accepts her as a living goddess, and this is what we call poetic justice. Now there is a subplot also in the play. The subplot of the play is a foil to the main plot. The heroine Rani is wooed by Naga. Likewise, Kapanna is loved by a snake woman. The human and non-human relationship in the main plot is represented in the subplot with only a change in the gender. So there is a snake man and here it is a snake woman. And in the end, what happens? Kapanna goes away with the snake woman and he leaves his poor mother all alone, and she is miserable at the end. There are certain Greek elements in the play. The story of Nagmandala is narrated by a character called Story. Karnad gives the flame the function of the Greek chorus. Just like in the Greek chorus keeps on talking about the events that are happening in the play. Similarly, here the flames keep on talking. The story, the man and the flames remain on the stage throughout the play. In the play, the man and the story observe, analyze, narrate, comment on the subsequent scenes. Now, the major theme in this play is one of betrayal. The play can be interpreted in accordance with the theme of betrayal at the following 5 levels. Husband betrays his wife. So, you have Aparna having a mistress. Wife betrays her husband. She has relations with the snake, although in the beginning she does not know it's a snake. Supernatural being betrays the couple. So, you have the Naga changing himself as Aparna and having relations with Rani, and Rani does not know about it in the beginning. Aparna definitely does not know about it. Son betrays his mother. Then you have Kurudava's son, Kapanna, betraying his mother. For whom? For the snake woman. And there is self-betrayal. Everybody betrays himself or herself in the play. Husband knows that he is accepting Rani as a goddess and she is not one. Rani knows she herself is not a goddess. She has done wrong things, although unknowingly in the beginning. Still, she has to take on the act of being a goddess. And so you have all the people betraying themselves towards the end. Now Mandala explained. What is Mandala? Padma Malini Sundara Raghavan explains the term Mandala thus. The word Mandala means a geometrical pattern often set within a circle or a circle within a square. In rituals, it assumes a magical significance possessing a power of Shakti of its own. In magic, the mandala implies protection. You will find that whenever any kind of magic is performed, you have these particular shapes being made of a circle and then a square in between, and then you have these set patterns being followed. We talk about the plot structure. King Cobra lives in the dark tresses of Rani and Kapanna disappears mysteriously with Yakshini. Kapanna lives happily or rather unhappily with his wife Rani, and Kurudava becomes mad when Kapanna disappears. Karnad has woven the main plot and the subplot into a perfect texture. The main plot deals with a love triangle involving Rani, Apanna and Naga. Subplot has three characters: Kurudava, Kapanna and Snake Woman. Now the ending. The playwright has proposed three endings. In the first, they live happily ever after. Both Naga and Apanna fuse into oneself, that is realization. Naga commits suicide. For one of the two selves to survive coherently, the other must commit suicide, an emotional suicide. Both Naga and Apanna coexist. History repeats itself. If you have any questions on this particular text, you may put it in the segment given below. Thank you.